Hey everybody, this is Gabe Hernandez with Comical Opinions. Some interesting news dropped today, and so I'm doing a little bit of an earlier stream than normal, but I thought it was worth talking about because this is a fairly impactful move from DC Comics related to the comics industry and basically how it functions. So I wanted to talk about the announcement that DC Universe, which is their online sort of all-in-one media app, is splitting up. No surprise. Most of their media content, like original programming shows, movies, what have you, is moving over to HBO Max. This is all under the Time Warner Media umbrella. So there's no surprise there. And we've seen that happening piecemeal over time, like Titans, some of their Doom Patrol, I think, also is going over to HBO Max, and the Swamp Thing, which kind of almost didn't end at the end of its first season, but from what I understand was really well liked, is moving over to CW. So all the media stuff is being split up, and what's happening is DC Universe is now being rebranded to DC Universe Infinite, and it's basically going to be comics only. So effectively, it would be a competitor to Comixology if you're used to Comixology, and I think most people who read digital comics are. So I want to put this together this video to talk about real quick. Look at the pricing, look at what's included in it, and just sort of given my crystal ball, if it all goes well, who likes it, who's going to like it, who's not, who's going to benefit from it, and who's not. And let's see if it gives us something to think about. So here's the official DC blog with the announcement. I won't play the video. You can go to YouTube and search for the announcement there, but we can go through that. So the change happens effectively January 21st in 2021. So about 4 months from now, roughly a little over 4 months from now, the change goes into effect. The platform will contain about 24,000 comics. Let's see, what else do they have? Let's go through it a little bit. Premium. It'll become a premium digital comic book service set to launch in 2021, January, with access to more than 24,000 comics books at launch. So that's, I don't know if that's their entire catalog, but that's a pretty hefty amount of stuff. DC Universe Infinite subscribers will also encounter digital first comics, so that's not a surprise. Things like Black and White and Red Harley Quinn, which I think was received fairly well recently, and some other newer digital first stuffs that are coming out. Exclusive access to DC fan events. Okay, so DC, of all the virtual cons that happened this summer, DC fandom was, I think, probably the best. So if they do more of that and on a more regular, consistent basis, sure, that might be something interesting if you're really if you're really locked in as a DC fan. As well as a steady stream, and here's where we get to the big one, as well as a steady stream of recently released comics 6 months after the physical versions hit store shelves. So that's the big one right there. So what that means is, if you're used to going to a comic book shop and let's say you want the latest issue of Superman, it'll become available on DC Universe Infinite, but not until basically 6 months later. So that'll play heavily into the decision-making process. And I put together some really rough, crude slides to kind of talk about that a little bit. Nothing death by PowerPoint-ish, but just to kind of put it in simple bullet terms. So let's take a look at the pricing. $7.99 a month or $74.99 for a year. So what is that if you kind of equate that to what you would spend if you walked into a comic book store, that's about 2 books worth, 2 new releases on New Comic Book Day, which is usually Wednesdays for most, Tuesdays now for DC. So that's about the price of 2 comics. So about the price of 2 comics per month, you get all of that. So from a pure volume perspective, is it worth it? Well, if you read a lot of comic books, yes. If you read a lot of back issues and collections and famous runs and what have you, is it worth it? Yes. If you go for the annual model, which is $74.99 a month, $74.99 a year, sorry, which breaks down to $625 a month, then you're talking about a book and a half. So from a pure cost savings perspective, if you buy a lot of DC comics on a monthly basis, just on the pure financials, it's a good deal. It's a very good deal, as a matter of fact. And then they talk about the rest of the stuff as far as it's available on iOS and Android. So if you have an iPad or an iPhone or an Android tablet, it's all going to work there. Some of the types of digital first comics you can expect, like Aquaman Deep Dives, Batman Gotham Knights, Deceased, Hope at World's End, There's that Harley Quinn Black, White, and Red. All those kinds of things. That's fine. Fan favorite community area will be free to all registered and premium subscribers with a full calendar of events. So basically, like a forum. You might like that. You may not. It sort of depends on your need for the sort of fan group interaction. And then they're also talking about if you sub up early, you're going to get a reduced price access to HBO Max, which is where all that media, entertainment, sort of video content jumped over to. So that's it in a nutshell. iOS and Android. It's just on a pure financial basis. It's worth the money just for all the volumes of comics that you like. Plus, you'll have access to some video stuff. Although this is kind of dubious if they're saying that you're going to have access to fan events and whatnot. A lot of that stuff is going to be posted on YouTube anyway, eventually at some point. So that has probably limited appeal. And a reduced subscription model for early adopters to HBO Max. If you're really into HBO content, that might be worth it for you too. But I took a hit at putting together some bullets about who I think is really going to get the most out of this and who's probably not going to get the most out of this. And we'll talk about sort of the winners and losers out of this model. So who's going to like it? Casual readers that don't need the latest issue right now. So if you're willing to wait 6 months and you just don't need to be if you're not worried about spoilers and you're just more on the casual side of things and don't need to know all the latest stories right now today, this is going to be great for you. This is perfectly fine. It's worth it to you if you just buy comics here, there, and everywhere and just aren't worried about knowing exactly what happens today. Back issue collectors that don't want to pay heavy markups. So if you started a run back in 1997 and never got to finish it and don't feel like paying exorbitant amounts on eBay or something just to finish the collection so you know how the story went so you can have access to the story, this is great for you. And then even though it's kind of, in my mind, sort of small, if you're interested in that DC experience, like all the fan stuff, like all the forums, the community interactions, all the stuff that DC could probably push as part of their overall experience, and you're really into that stuff, this is going to be worth it to you. The folks that probably won't like it, and this is just my opinion, your mileage may vary, but this is kind of where I'm coming from on this. Hardcore speculators of the print comics. So if you're a hardcore speculator, which means you invest in the print stuff with the intention that the comic you invest in is going to be worth something for resale value or for sale on eBay, you're on the other end of that transaction. This is probably going to hurt you a bit, especially for the back issue stuff, the stuff that's decades old. This is going to probably put take a bite out of your business model. Readers who want the latest issue right away. If you can't wait and that 6 month lag between the print version and the digital version is too much for you, yeah, this is not going to work for you. And readers who don't like digital, yeah, there's absolutely a percentage of the reader population that likes things in print, that doesn't like digital. That's just the way it is. So if you don't like reading things on a tablet, if you don't like that digital experience, this is not going to work for you at all. So there are nuances, there's overlap. Some are going to have a little bit of one and maybe we'll like it in some ways, but won't like it in others. There's no absolutes here, but these are just quick hits. Now, as far as general, because DC is really pushing the innovation on this one, they're really pushing hard to innovate and sort of push the comics industry in a more forward-thinking direction. Whether it works or not, who knows, but we'll find out. This is definitely pushing into experimental territory. Let's see what happens. But if I had to kind of take out my crystal ball and says, if this model continues and expands out, who's going to win from this model and who's going to lose from this model, besides DC, of course. The winners are casual readers. This is early access. It's more ubiquitous access. You don't need to find a comic book shop to get your comics, and you can get a lot more access to superhero material in a, hopefully, depending if this is available outside the United States, and that's going to be a big question that I don't quite see answered here is, will this be available in every country? So we'll see how that goes. Completionists, again, it's those people that want all the back issues to fill out a particular run from either a particular artist or a particular writer or just a particular story arc, and is missing a few issues. They can now fill this in as long as they're not doing it from a speculator point of view. So they now have the complete story. This is going to be great for them because they're going to have access to all those comics. And the bingers. These are the folks that will want to get a hold of a run. They'll want to wait till a run is finished and then just start binging. So in a roundabout way, bingers are sort of the folks that will say, well, I'll wait for it to come out and trade. Well, in this sense, you don't have to wait for it to come out and trade if you're willing to wait the few months that it'll take for all the issues for a particular story arc to come out. On the losing side of that battle, speculator investors that rely on rarity. So if there's a particular issue that has like an early appearance of Etrigan, as an example, and they rely on the rarity of that particular issue to make a big payday because there's somebody who really, really wants that, and they're counting on that rarity to make their money back for what they bought for, and on the flip side, to give it to that person for a much increased price. Well, this is going to take a big bite out of that business model again. So speculator investors that rely on rarity, they're going to take a hit. Local comic book shops that have diversified and rely on back issues. So we've seen this with the pandemic lockdown, where comic book shops that rely on new comics on a weekly basis as their mainstay for their revenue, they took a massive hit. And in some cases, they've closed. So the comic book shops that have been able to maintain their business are comic book shops that they diversify. And in a lot of cases, that means diversifying on back issue sales of issues that you can't find anywhere else that were printed some number of years ago. This is sort of the same thing as the speculator market, except for on an individual basis, this is the whole business model where you kind of have a comic book shop that relies on back issue orders and the new stuff coming in. So this is definitely going to take out a hit out of their model as well. And then digital readers, and this is kind of a lesser problem, but it definitely is a problem. We see this a lot on the video game side. Digital readers that want everything in one place. A lot of people have gotten used to Comixology, and they want everything in that one spot. So if DC, and although it wasn't clear in their announcement whether or not they're actually going to do this, but if they do this and take all their inventory out of Comixology and put it into DC Universe Infinite, that's definitely going to create a complexity problem where people want all their digital stuff in one place. You see this a lot in the video gaming industry, where people want everything in Steam, and then the Epic Game Store comes along, and there's a bunch of hubbub about that, because now you have to have some games in Epic, you have to have some games that are in Steam because of the exclusivity deals, and that created a bit of a stir 6 months back or so, and just a lot of gamers didn't like that, because now they have to have a bunch of different apps loaded up just to play their games. I can foresee in a future state, they kind of have this a little bit with Marvel Unlimited, but now it's Marvel Unlimited, it's Comixology, and now we're going to have DC Universe Infinite. That number of now I have to have 3 and 4, and as it expands out maybe to other publishers, like maybe it goes to Valiant or Dynamite or somebody else, if they do the same thing, now you're going to have all these different apps that people have to read their comic book stores, and it gets on people's nerves, just putting it in plain terms. So again, this is not a comprehensive list by any means. You're definitely going to have overlap. Some people are going to win in one way and lose in another, and maybe a new business model will emerge, especially for the speculators or people who traffic heavily in the back issues. So maybe you're going to have a bit of both, and we'll see how that goes. So this was just this was sort of breaking news. I thought it was interesting, and people needed to kind of hear what was going on as far as who's doing what in the app space, as far as DC's now kind of pushing really hard into developing DC Universe into something that's really geared towards comics readers, comics collectors. And is it the right move? Is it the wrong move? I think from an innovation perspective, it's the right move. There's definitely going to be winners and losers in this game, so we'll see how that pans out. But I thought because this is pretty breaking, and I think this is going to be pretty big, I thought it was worth talking about and kind of sharing my opinion on that. So That's my opinion for the day. Thank you for your time. Again, if you haven't already, please click on the link below in the description and go to the Comical Opinions newsletter, where I'm trying to put out a new, more in-depth article on these topics every single week. It's completely free, and I'm working on some perks that you can only get if you're a subscriber. So please subscribe to the newsletter. And if you thought this video was interesting or helpful or informative in any way, please like, share, comment, subscribe. If you and give me that thumbs up. If you don't think this was a good video, give me that thumbs down and give me that comments down below. Give me something in the comment section down below. You don't have to like it, but I want your opinion. I want your feedback. That's the only way this channel is going to continue to grow and continue to get better. And anything that you can contribute as far as your opinions, give me your opinion as much as I give you yours. That's just going to make this better for everybody. So this is Gabe Hernandez for Comical Opinions. I thank you very much for your time, and you have a great day.